theanswer.com.
Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity. Right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Small encroachments can lead to big reductions in one's individual liberty, constitutional rights. So I say that in the context of a Supreme Court decision on Monday to not take up a challenge to a federal law that restricts the ownership of gun silencers. The court rejected an appeal that was brought by two Kansas men, the owner of a military surplus store who sold the silencer and the man who bought it. He purchased the silencer to protect his ears, said the customer, because his hearing was damaged during military service. He also said the store owner told him that a silencer made and sold in the same state was not subject to the federal law that requires the devices to be registered. That turned out to be bad advice. Both men arrested, convicted, and they appealed their conviction, saying the federal law violates their Second Amendment rights, Supreme Court declining to take up that appeal. We also have the story out of the Virginia Beach shooting at that municipal complex where the shooter allegedly used a suppressor,
silencer. He had two of them, I think, right?
With his during his rampage. And so is this like a bump stock thing? We shouldn't care that much. Federal laws governing, regulating, perhaps even banning silencers, as undoubtedly POTUS candidates on the left will be proposing when they can't go after specific types of weapons because they weren't used in a mass murder like in Virginia Beach. It was sort of standard issue handguns. Can't go after the quote-unquote assault weapons, so you go after accessories.
Well, even President Trump, though, who's been very supportive of gun ownership, did say he promised last week that he'd seriously look at banning suppressors or silencers.
So is that not a big deal? Should we not worry about that? Should we not die on that hill, even if you're a Second Amendment rights proponent? Well, let's put that question to an expert in the space. He is John Lott Jr., president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, author of a number of books on the topic, including The War on Guns and More Guns, Less Crime. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Good morning. So should we pitch much of a fit over silencers?
Well, I mean, I think there are real safety issues for people using silencers or suppressors. You know, I think people have seen too many TV shows and movies which actually make it look like these make guns silent. You know, when you're talking about a handgun, like the type of handgun that was used in the Virginia Beach attack, a .45 ACP, or other handguns, you're talking about something that's about 160 decibels. That's about that's louder than a jet fighter pilot, a jet fighter at launch. These are very loud sounds there, and if you use a suppressor, they'll lower it by about 30 decibels. But it's hardly silent to have something 130. You're talking about something that's louder than an ambulance siren or louder than a jackhammer or a riveter. You know, it's louder than a thunderclap. It's about the same sound as the peak stadium noise that you can have.
Well, yeah, because everybody there said that they heard gunshots. I mean, you know, every witness that they interviewed said it was pow, 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 it was so loud. And so why then what's the purpose of the silencers?
Well, my guess is the reason why he had a silencer is if you've ever shot a gun inside a firing range versus outside, unless it has a lot of soundproofing on the wall, you get an echo inside, and it makes it very loud. And you know, it's even much louder the impact when you're inside a building than when you're outside. And so my guess is just for his own comfort, he did that. I mean, I assume he probably had earplugs or whatever too, but it would still be very loud. Look.
Yeah, but John, I understand from movies and television shows that the only people who use silencers are assassins. So,
Right.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
Spies.
if
spies,
people
yeah, bad people.
people go to a firing range and you're going to be firing lots of bullets, it makes a difference whether it's at 160 decibels or 130 decibels over
So,
time.
so when gun control advocates say, as they said with respect to silencers and promotion of their prohibition, the silencers make it harder for this is their argument, make it harder for first responders to pinpoint the source of gunfire, also lead victims to think the sound is coming from farther away than it actually is.
Well, a gun that's being fired inside, even with a silencer, with the echo, is going to be extremely loud. And the police in this case were able to use the sound of the gunfire to locate where the killer is. There's one thing I was really hoping to get into with regard to the Virginia Beach attack, and it's something that the media, national media, has completely missed out on, and that is we've had yet another attack where people were banned from having guns for protection. This Operations Building 2, where the attack occurred, really only had municipal employees there, and Virginia Beach was one of the municipalities that banned concealed carry by its employees. In fact, that morning, one of the employees there in the previous evening had been thinking about bringing her permitted concealed handgun with her to work, but she decided against doing that because it would violate the ordinances that the city had. She had been concerned about this killer in this case, apparently had talked to other employees about it, and nothing had been done, but she was concerned about his behavior and had talked to her husband and apparently others about bringing the gun with her that day, but she obeyed the rules and decided at the last moment not to bring it with her. She was one of the people that was killed in this attack. And it's just, time after time after time, 98% of the mass public shootings since 1950 have taken place in areas like this where the victims are not being allowed to defend themselves. These killers are not stupid. They may be crazy, but they pick places where they know victims can't defend themselves. Not only was the building a gun-free zone, essentially, but this killer used his key card to get into an area where only employees could get into, where he engaged in the attack there.
Yeah.
And that's after he sent an email that he was resigning.
Yeah, and you make the point in your piece at Fox News, and we talked to him about it on this show. Andrew Pollack, somebody who has the standing because, of course, his daughter Meadow was murdered in Parkland. Andrew Pollack, the father of Meadow Pollack, says we need to rescind these gun-free zone designations for exactly the example that you're providing, what the example that Parkland provided, where an officer didn't do his job and the kids were left and the adults were left to try and protect themselves. And that's something that's central to what he's out there promoting.
Right. Look, I mean, the media bias on this is just overwhelming. I mean, the media just refuse, the mainstream media, you cannot find any discussions about the fact that this was yet another gun-free zone. You look at these cases, one after another. They'll go through all sorts of details about the attack. They'll talk about the type of gun used or how the person obtained the gun, facts that they frequently get wrong in the initial reports. The easiest thing often to go and determine in these cases is, did this attack occur in a gun-free zone? But they will refuse to mention it. Over the years, I've talked to a number of news editors at different places, and I've asked them about why they don't report that these attacks keep on occurring in places where people are banned from having guns. And they tell me, well, you got to get to us within the news cycle, within hours of the attack. And so I've done that. And then they tell me, well, it would just be political for us to go and include that in the news stories. So they still refuse to do that. And my guess is, and I think the news people understand this, that the entire gun control debate that we have right now would be very different if people, if even once in a while, they heard that we've had yet another attack where people weren't allowed to have guns. Here you have a killer who was banned from having a gun in this. He's still employed there.
Yeah, right.
He broke the rule. All the other law-abiding people, including this woman, this Katie that died there, who had been thinking about breaking the rule and having her gun with her there, she obeyed it. When it finally came down to it, even though she was concerned about her safety, and the safety of others there, she said, I just can't break this rule, this regulation that makes this a gun-free zone, and she obeyed it.
Well, right. I mean, so this just goes to the whole. This is the whole philosophy, the difference in philosophy, the idea and the magical thinking of the left. The idea is, I'm a law-abiding citizen, then I purchase a weapon. Now I've become a threat to the peace. Now I'm in danger of not being law-abiding anymore because I bought a gun for self-protection. It is illogical. But all of these arguments are sentimental. They're not based in logic. Thus, we don't really get anywhere, and we have to rely ideally on jurists like Antonin Scalia to impose some rationality through interpretation of the Constitution. So the battle, I guess, the intellectual battle continues. John Lott Jr., at the forefront of the intellectual battle, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, author of a number of books, including The War on Crime, the War on Guns, and More Guns, Less Crime. John Lott Jr., thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. People can find more at our website at crimeresearch.org, but I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Crimeresearch.org. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560.